I think two aspects to the below the line marketing. I think below the line the time has really come. I think increasingly consumers want a lot more of an experience and less of brands throwing communication at them. So I think the whole challenge is really involving consumers and getting them into experiencing your brand. And therefore I think it's the best time now for the experiential marketing industry. I think essentially experiential marketing and the event industry has to recognize that the core idea thought has to originate from the brand. I think the most critical thing that brand marketers are looking for is ideas that cement back into the brand. So really it has to be an idea that springs from the brand. The other aspect that I think the event industry has to look at is the whole business of measurement. Today most of the big spends in marketing are measured, and very often in events you don't get a real sense. There is this feeling that, oh, the event did well, there was a big crowd, but the real impact is really in terms of the kind of measurement, putting hard metrics, and then being able to go back and say that this is the kind of returns that I got. So I think those are two areas that need to be worked at. The third, I think, is still there are a lot of lacunae in terms of quality of execution. Unlike traditional media like print and television where they go through layers of approvals, a lot of event marketing is live, and therefore there are elements that tend to slip. So I think tightening up the entire offering and focusing on great execution, picking up from learnings, what went right, what went wrong, I think that makes a big difference. So you said talking to the consumer. I agree that event is about reaching out to many consumers, but I think the challenge is in the manner in which you reach out to him, which means just reaching out to a lot of consumers is not. I think it's the quality of the kind of messaging that you provide to him. Just to give you an example, I think let's say the IPL has been a great example of an event, right? It reaches millions of consumers, it's a huge media property. But I think if you're able to build a strong connect to the brand, that's critical. Now in measurement, my point is, one is the intensity of the consumer contact. Two is how many of these consumers then convert into actually, you can say, brand consumers, how many of them convert into brand ambassadors, how many of them start talking about their experience in the product. So I think it's not just the number of consumers reach, I think it's the quality of the exposure, it's the kind of stimulus that you provide to the consumer, and it has to integrate with the overall proposition of the brand. No, so I think the way people measure the efficacy of television commercials is two parts. One, like you said, is the reach and number of consumers who are aware of the brand. But a lot of it is actually, if you take a campaign that runs for 2 months, you do a pre and a post. So pre, you see the kind of awareness, you see the kind of brand impact, and post the commercial, what is the kind of impact. And then normally in all your qualitative studies, you add questions that directly connect with some of the messaging in the TVC. So similarly, my point in events is that you need to look at, what are the key objectives that you did that experiential program or that event, and then have questions tagged on into your quality research to actually pick up what are the points of connect, because that's the only way you're able to justify your spend. That's the only way you're going to enhance your spend in the future. So my principle in terms of how you can measure the effectiveness of an event is two parts. One is the standard quantitative parameters, how many consumers you reach, and what is the kind of amplification that has got you. So that is really the awareness part of it, of people who've been reached by the event, which is easy to measure. The second part, which is more critical, is the qualitative angle, and by qualitative is the intensity of the contact. What has that exposure to that event done for that consumer? And that typically can be done by doing pre and post studies, which means you actually take a set of consumers before the event and ask them a certain set of questions, and then those who are exposed to the event, subsequent to that event happening, you actually do a post study, and then you find that if certain parameters have picked up, it clearly means that that event has had the necessary appeal. So you actually, in a sense, massage the consumer's thought or reinforce a certain brand objective. I think marketers on their part have to do their bit. I think the first important part is to treat event management companies as partners. Just like today, your creative agency, your media agency, your PR agency are integral parts of your team. I think the event company has to be bought in much earlier. So it's not about, I've got a great idea, I've got a great piece of communication, I've worked the whole thing. Now I call my event guy and say, hey, help me do an event. I think the event company has to come in much earlier. Two, I think there should be a recognition that a lot of great ideas actually can come from the event industry. So it's really not about it's a post facto, but it's something that has to be part of your brand thinking.